And as I said, we've identified the assembly that's at fault. That came back overnight with us. We've got it here back in Brackley.
Hi everyone, welcome to this week's Akkodis Debrief. My name is Olivia, and today I'm joined by Shov answering all your questions from the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. Fresh from Imola, how you doing, Shov?
Well, good. We're very busy here. Obviously, wasn't a great race for performance. We also had the DNF, so plenty to get stuck into in the next couple of days ahead of Monaco.
Absolutely, and plenty of questions from this race weekend. Of course, no one better to answer them than yourself. So on to George's race first. So George had started to report that the car felt a bit off since the reconnaissance laps, and that feeling carried on throughout the race despite there not being anything detected at the time. Do we now have any clues as to what was going on with his car?
Well, you're correct that he mentioned there was a problem on the laps to the grid. Now, it's not always easy to get a good read on the balance on those laps to the grid, but then saying that, the drivers are pretty good at telling us what they're feeling. They're normally quite reliable. All we can do on the grid is really get the bodywork off, have a bit of a look at the car, check there's nothing obvious. You've only got a few minutes there, and there was nothing that we could see that looked like a problem. But then saying that, the car was fine at the end of qualifying, and we didn't do anything to it overnight. You go out on the laps of the grid, you'd have thought it would be okay. But there was something he was detecting, so that continued through the race. We've now got the car and all the parts in Monaco. There's a good program there to check through the bits, to scan what we need to see that nothing has a delamination or something. We'll check that everything's done up as it should be, and make sure that if there is any issue, we can solve it ahead of Monaco itself.
Just on that, you said that the cars are already in Monaco, they're being assessed there. How do you do that without bringing the cars back to the factory?
Well, we've got a lot of the crew out there. Some of the checks will just be sort of visual and physical checks of look at the part, does it look exactly as it should, check everything's tight and positioned where it should be. And then you can also do various non-destructive tests. You can ultrasound scan the carbon parts like the gearbox, and that's what would tell you whether there's any delamination that might lead to a bit of movement. So as I said, it's quite a big program, but we'll do it all out there. It's a lot easier than bringing everything back here and then trying to get ready for the race in a few days' time.
Well, fingers crossed we figure out what it is then. And on to his strategy. So how much did that first pit stop actually affect George's overall strategy? And was there any consideration to actually extending that first stint despite the overheating?
Well, the pit stop certainly affected it, but the reason we had to make the pit stop was because he started to lose a lot of pace in those few laps. Now, knowing that we were going to have to come in, we would have done what Leclerc did, which was to stop a lap earlier. Because in doing that, because George lost pace, he undercut him. So George lost those positions. So yes, it was definitely a problem having to stop then. The big problem though was just the time that we lost early on. That then put us out of sync with a lot of the other cars. There were some that were going very long on the medium. He had to then battle through those, and ultimately it got quite difficult. But one of the other problems was one that actually Leclerc also had, which is if you started on the medium and stopped early, and then you took another medium at the VSC, then you didn't have any tyres that were suitable, so they were left with a long stint at the end to get to the finish on that used tyre.
And on to Kimi's race, not the easiest one for the local rookie, but what actually happened with Kimi's car?
Well, we haven't got completely to the bottom of it, but it was relatively easy to at least work out which faults were causing the issue. So it was a problem with the throttle damper assembly. We were seeing on the car that occasionally he wasn't getting to full throttle. Now the sensors we can run routines that allow us to recalibrate those live while we're driving, but ultimately it's a big safety issue if the throttle is malfunctioning. So the thing that stopped him was actually the car's own program deciding that there was enough going wrong here that it was going to shut down that throttle signal, and that was obviously what brought the car to a halt. Now, with the fault that we had, we weren't going to make the end of the race anyway, so we'd always err on the side of caution. And as I said, we've identified the assembly that's at fault. That came back overnight with us. We've got it here back in Brackley. They even started stripping that during the night. So those investigations are going on, and it's unlikely to be a particularly difficult thing to solve for Monaco. Not guaranteed, though, that we won't be making some design changes for future races. So in the short term, we'll contain it. Longer term, there might be a design change.
Interesting. Well, it was a shame for him, but if there's anyone that's going to come back into it with more fire in their belly, it's our Kimi. And onto that with Monaco, actually. So it is a race with minimal overtaking. So how crucial is it for us to really capitalize on our qualifying strengths? And can we afford to take maybe a few more risks with the setup in order to lock in track positions?
Well, I mean, as you say, it's definitely a race that the drivers will all want to qualify well. It's a race that if you want to win it, it's definitely ideal to be on pole. But you've still got to have some race pace, because the way that you have a controlled race in Monaco is not only are you on pole position, but you can also pull a gap when you need to. And that's what protects you against the undercut. So the car has been better in qualifying than it has in races. It's not quite quick enough in qualifying, but we've certainly got a lot to find in our race pace. So we're not going to go to Monaco and suddenly push it even further in that direction. We will be doing the normal long run work, making sure that we're trying to keep the rear tyres in good condition. But as you're alluding to, hopefully the car will go well there on a single lap. The drivers are looking forward to it. It's a very unique and challenging circuit. But if we can get a car that's stable, that gives them confidence, hopefully we can put in a good showing.
But we also had upgrades in Imola. How do you think that they're going to perform in Monaco?
Well, we're reviewing that at the moment, so we'll make some final decisions on the car spec, and then there are some parts that we would bring to Monaco just because it is such a different circuit. There are various suspension changes that you make for that track that you don't need at any others. It's very difficult though to predict how everything's going to work in Monaco. It's a very, very slow speed circuit, so even that makes it hard to do the normal measurements of downforce. There's a lot of warp in the track, so there's places where the wheels are coming off the road and it's quite difficult to keep the car very consistent in those instances. Ride is quite important, a lot of curbs, quite a few bumps there, and also, as I said, there's this very slow speed nature, the walls are very close, and that means that the drivers just want a car that's stable, that they know that the rear end isn't going to step out on them in a very high speed corner, and that if they carry the speed into a slow speed, it's going to turn well and get them round without running into the barriers.
Can you just, you said that there's a very Monaco specific suspension. Can you just explain that a little bit more?
It's not the only thing we change, but one example is the steering system. Because you've got the slowest corner on the whole calendar, it's a 180 degree hairpin, Lowe's hairpin, and normally a car wouldn't get round that. So we'd run out of lock and they'd be struggling. So one example is just that we put a steering rack on the car that allows the wheels to turn more in that corner, and that gives the drivers a bit of controllability, particularly lap one of the race. You can't always pick your line through there, but that means they're able to turn it enough to get round cleanly.
So off of the back of this weekend, what are your expectations for Monaco and then Barcelona on this triple header?
Well, after a difficult race in Imola, we're hoping to obviously put on a better showing in Monaco. And as you said, the car's been qualifying well this year. So although that won't be our only focus, we're still looking at the race pace. We'll certainly hope to be able to put in a decent performance on Saturday. And Barcelona, well, that's a more normal circuit, but at this time of year, it's normally hot. So it's going to be challenging for the tyres. There's a lot of fast corners. So we're reviewing what we've learned in Imola. Hopefully we'll be able to make some progress there. And on top of that, we've got some more development coming to the car. So trying to get that all to the car for the European season and what's left of it. So yeah, we're working really hard. There's a lot of analysis going on, a lot of work to bring performance to the car. Hopefully we'll be able to put in a better showing.
And just on that, actually, there's new rules for Monaco this year. Can you just explain to us what they are and how you think it's going to impact the race?
The rule, put simply, is you've got to run 3 different sets of tyres. Now, the reason they did that is last year we had a lap 1 red flag. People were able to fit new tyres at the restart, and those tyres were able to go to the end of the race. So then it was a bit of a procession. By putting in an extra stop, it doesn't guarantee you won't get something similar. If, for instance, you had a red flag on the first lap and then another one from the restart, teams would then still be looking to run to the finish, but it definitely reduces the probability of that happening. It will be interesting though, because it's a race where you know how many times everyone's going to stop. It'll be quite predictable from that point of view, but it will also be quite challenging from a strategic point of view, because the ideal Monaco in the past was that you get out front and you stay out front. But having to make 2 pit stops, that's going to be even more challenging.
Nothing like a little bit of spice.